Hey guys, I'm going to shoot a quick video here of the Gen 6 454 in the Silverton and Marco Island. This will be the intake installation. I've just got the intake gaskets in place, and I'll discuss in a second how I do it. But basically, I've got the the RTV, the gray RTV. I think it's up to like 500 degrees. It's pretty good stuff. No one uses the enclosed gaskets in the kits because by the time you've done a little bit of machine work to heads and blocks and all that jazz, all of your lines get off anyway, and those intake like the rubber gaskets or the cork gaskets that are form fit for the front and the rear, they do more harm than good. So throw them away. Every pro builder that I've ever seen or talked to, they only use the RTV, and it's probably about a 1/4 inch tall bead, and it's about 3/8 inch wide. I have a tendency to hug the front of the wall on the front, and then in the back I have a tendency to try to hug the back. I've pulled plenty of engines apart, and I've seen this stuff hanging over and literally just hanging down into the block by a 1/2 inch, and it's no big deal. It's not going to hurt anything, but I just feel better knowing that it's squeezing out the back rather than squeezing into the engine. Another trick I learned from a really cool guy in Davie, Florida. This is Rich that owns Redline Racing. He turned me on to using this weather strip and gasket adhesive. This stuff is unbelievably strong, and where he taught me to use it is on oil pan gaskets, on the older, like the Mark IV 454s. I'm not going to go into that epistle, but this stuff is awesome. You put a little bit on there, and when it fastens, it does not move, because we all know that oil pans are really difficult to get to seal up if they slip around, or if you don't have them properly fastened in and glued in and stuff. And where I'm going with this is I always put just a small amount in a real flat, indiscriminate area that helps me glue these babies in place, because the last thing I want is this slipping down or slipping over. And when I do this whole fitment, I run the outer bolts in there just to make sure the threads are not going to bind, and that assures that once you gently set your intake down, first off, the 3M yellow adhesive is right here, and on either end of both gaskets. So there's no reason why, if you go in very perpendicular to the center line, it should marry right up really well, and everything should be fine. Well, obviously you're going to pull these bolts out before, but I like this as an alignment tool to start out with. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to go in detail about the intake. This is probably going to get kind of boring, but I'm just going to set the phone to the side and do this as quickly as possible. Being in the boat here, I simply cannot find any place to place the phone where it'll get a really good, like, bird's eye view back here, and I don't have a helper. So I'm just going to set this right here, and I'm going to try to finish this as quickly as possible. Well, a little while ago I had a better view a little while ago. I don't even know if it's going to pick up. We'll see. Let me just get out of the light and flip this intake over and install it. Almost forgot the bolts. And I'm going to do the same thing on these bolts, where I put the assembly lube on the I'm sorry, not the assembly lube, the aviation gasket seal on the threads, because these go into the heads. You know, they got a seal for coolant. I think I may be wrong about that. These may be. I may be wrong about that, guys. If that's the case, I'll just put engine oil on them. I don't think they do. Okay, I'm holding up on this intake because I have really poor lighting here. If you can get one started in a corner while you're holding everything up in place, you're usually pretty safe. Okay, I'm gonna have to move the light. Got it. I like to move it forward and back just a small amount, not much, but just enough to kind of feel it. Now right now I'm just going to put these bolts in here dry, just to kind of get a feel for alignment, and also to assure that it kind of pulls the gaskets down, and I'm not saying anything dries into place but very quickly, but the RTV does set fairly fast. It's not a slow set at all. Okay, that tried to move a little bit. Cool, got it. I don't want to sound like a complainer, but the spacing on the gaskets is not, the bolt spacing from that very back bolt to the very front bolt is not the greatest in the world. I don't know if that's intentional to force it into some sort of alignment, but my theory is, why don't you just put them on the damn center line and let the installer be responsible for aligning everything. It's frustrating because I'm going to have to put a socket on that probably, and basically kind of motivate it to get started. Oh shit, it's 9/16. God damn it.